The centerpiece was perfect. White orchids arranged in that effortless way that probably cost someone 3 hours and $400. The kind of flowers that said, "We have taste," without saying anything at all. My mother had been planning this dinner for 6 weeks, her 60th birthday. The guest list read like a networking event. Colleagues from the firm, her book club, the neighbors who mattered, and of course, family. I stood in the doorway of Lumiere, watching the servers glide between tables with the kind of precision I'd trained them for. My restaurant. Though nobody walking through those doors tonight knew that. "Maya, you came!" My mother's voice carried across the private dining room. She was already halfway through her first glass of champagne, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Everyone, this is my daughter. Maya helps out with catering sometimes." Helps out with catering sometimes. I smiled. The same smile I'd perfected over 32 years. The one that said, "Yes, that's exactly what I do," while my chest tightened just enough to remind me why I stopped expecting anything different. My younger brother, Derek, was holding court at the head of the table, still in his scrubs from the hospital, because of course he wore them to a family dinner. Dr. Derek Chen, cardiothoracic surgeon, the son who made our parents' annual holiday cards worth sending. "Maya!" He stood up, pulling me into a hug that smelled like antiseptic and expensive cologne. "Mom said you might not make it." Busy night at the bakery? The bakery, that's what they called it. What I did, 10 years of culinary school, stages in Lyon and Copenhagen, a Michelin-star earned last fall, and to my family, I ran the bakery. "Something like that," I said. I'd spent the morning at the ferry building, selecting produce for tomorrow's service. The farmer who grew my heirloom tomatoes had saved the best ones for me. We'd talked about his daughter, who wanted to go to culinary school. I'd offered to write her a recommendation. He'd almost cried. "You're changing lives, chef," he'd said. But here, in this room, I was just Maya. Who made cupcakes, or cookies, or whatever it was people who weren't serious did with flour. My father was showing photos on his phone to the couple seated next to him. "That's Derek's new place in Pacific Heights," he was saying. 3 bedrooms, view of the bay, he got a steal on it. I'd never shown them photos of Lumiere. They'd never asked. The restaurant had been a gutted warehouse when I found it 3 years ago. Exposed brick, broken windows, a floor so damaged we had to replace the entire foundation. I'd stood in the middle of that empty space with my architect, my contractor, and a bank loan that made my hands shake when I thought about it too long. "This is it," I'd said. "This is where we build it." My parents thought I was still working at other people's restaurants, still learning the business, still figuring things out. Dinner service began, and I watched the tables receive the first course, butter-poached lobster with fennel pollen and citrus. My dish, my recipe, the one that made the Chronicle's food critic cry into her napkin and write 1,200 words about the future of California cuisine. "Oh, this is gorgeous," my mother said, examining her plate. "Honey, you have to try this. This is why I wanted this restaurant. They're supposed to be the best in the city." She'd called 3 months ago to book the reservation. I'd answered the phone myself, listed as reservations coordinator in our system, for moments exactly like this. "Lumiere, how may I help you?" She hadn't recognized my voice. Or maybe she had, and assumed I'd taken a hostess job to make ends meet. I picked up my fork, took a bite of my own work. It was good. The lobster was cooked exactly 87 seconds, the way I'd trained Marco to do it. The fennel pollen was from the farm in Sonoma I visited every Thursday. The citrus was from a small grove in Ojai, where the owner, Mrs. Chen, no relation, had been growing Meyer lemons for 40 years. Every ingredient had a story. Every dish had 100 hours of testing behind it. Every plate that left my kitchen carried a piece of my soul. "Maya, you should take notes," my Aunt Linda said, gesturing at the plate with her fork. "If you want your baking thing to really take off, you need to learn from places like this. Presentation matters." My baking thing. I'd burned through 14 iterations of my signature dessert before getting it right. I'd cried on the floor of my first kitchen at 2 in the morning because I couldn't get the chocolate tempering right. I'd worked doubles for 3 years straight, living in a studio apartment with no furniture because every cent went back into ingredients, into training, into becoming good enough. Not good enough for them. Good enough for me. "I'll keep that in mind," I said. Derek was talking about a surgery he'd performed, a double bypass on a 68-year-old man. He described it in vivid detail while people ate their lobster, and somehow everyone stayed engaged, asked questions, leaned in. My mother beamed. I remembered the day I graduated from culinary school. I was 23. I'd called my parents from New York, crying happy, telling them I'd been accepted into an advanced program in France. My mother had said, "That's nice, honey. Derek just got his acceptance to Johns Hopkins. We're taking him to dinner at that steakhouse he loves. Can we call you back?" They never called back. I'd gone to France anyway. Spent 2 years in a kitchen where the head chef threw pans if your brunoise wasn't perfect, where we worked 16-hour days and ate standing up and fell asleep dreaming in French about mother sauces and knife techniques. I'd loved every brutal minute of it. I'd sent my parents a postcard from Lyon. "Learning so much. Missing you." They'd sent back a card from Derek's white coat ceremony with a note. "Wish you could have been here." It was beautiful. I'd been elbow deep in fish stock. I hadn't known there was a ceremony to miss. The second course arrived. Duck breast with cherry gastrique and fresh thyme. Another one of mine. I watched my father's face as he took the first bite. He closed his eyes, nodded. "Now this," he said to the table. "This is what you pay for. This is art." I almost laughed. Almost. The duck came from a farm in Petaluma where I'd spent a week learning about ethical farming practices. The cherries were Bings from Washington, chosen because their acidity balanced the richness of the duck fat. The thyme was from my own rooftop garden, where I grew herbs because I couldn't stand the idea of using anything less than perfect. Art. He'd called it art, just not my art. "Maya, you're being quiet," Derek said, looking at me across the table. "Everything okay?" "Just enjoying the food," I said. "You should really try to eat at nicer places more often," he said, meaning well. He always meant well. "Expand your palate. You can't just make cupcakes forever." I'd made exactly 3 cupcakes in my entire career, and they were for a charity event I donated to, a fundraiser for children's literacy. I'd made 300 cupcakes, each one decorated with a different book title in fondant. It had taken me and my team 36 hours. We'd raised $40,000. The organizer had cried. She'd said, "You didn't have to do this." I'd said, "Yes, I did." But sure. Cupcakes. My mother's friend Susan was asking Derek about work-life balance. "Do you even have time for a personal life?" she asked, laughing. "It's tough," Derek admitted. "But you know, when you're saving lives, you make sacrifices. Not everyone understands that kind of pressure." I thought about last Tuesday. A critic from the New York Times had shown up unannounced. I'd spent 4 hours in the kitchen, remaking dishes until they were flawless. Every plate had to be perfect. Every element had to sing. One bad review could close us. One brilliant review could change everything. We'd gotten the brilliant review. It had published yesterday, a tour de force of California cuisine, they'd written. Chef Chen is a force of nature, a talent that comes along once in a generation. My phone had exploded with messages from colleagues, other chefs, food writers. "Congratulations, you did it. You're going to be huge." I hadn't told my family. What would I say? "Hey, remember how you think I make cupcakes?" Actually, the New York Times just called me a generational talent. They wouldn't believe it. Or worse, they would, and they'd act like they'd always known, always supported me, always believed. The servers moved through the room like shadows, refilling water glasses, clearing plates, bringing out the third course. I'd hired most of them myself, trained them, learned their names, their stories, their dreams. The girl pouring wine right now, her name was Sophie. She was saving money for art school. I'd given her extra shifts when her mother got sick. Had paid for her mother's medication out of my own pocket because that's what you did for your team, for your people. She caught my eye as she passed, a flicker of recognition. A question, should I say something? I shook my head, just barely. Not yet. The third course was my favorite. Risotto with wild mushrooms and white truffle oil. Simple, classic, the kind of dish that seemed easy until you tried to make it yourself and realized every grain of rice mattered. Every stir counted. Every second of timing was critical. I'd learned to make risotto from an Italian grandmother in Tuscany. She'd been 78 years old with hands gnarled from arthritis, and she could make risotto that would make you weep. She'd taught me that cooking wasn't about technique. It was about love, about patience, about giving a damn. "This is incredible," my mother said. "I can't believe food can taste like this." I'd made her risotto once. 7 years ago, when I'd first come back from Europe, I'd invited my parents over to my tiny apartment, the one with the hot plate and no real stove. I'd made risotto with dried mushrooms because I couldn't afford fresh. I'd set the table with mismatched plates from Goodwill and lit candles to hide the fact that my apartment was falling apart. My mother had taken 3 bites and said, "This is nice, honey. A little heavy, though. Have you thought about making something lighter, like a salad?" My father had checked his watch every 10 minutes. They'd left before dessert. Derek had a thing, a ceremony, something important. I'd thrown the rest of the risotto away and cried for an hour. Then I'd gotten up, washed my face, and gone back to work. Because that's what you did. You didn't stop because someone didn't see you. You kept going until you became impossible to ignore. Except they were still ignoring me. Even while eating my food, even while sitting in my restaurant, even while I was right in front of them. My mother stood up as dessert was being prepared in the kitchen. She tapped her champagne flute with a knife, and the room went quiet. "I just want to thank you all for being here tonight," she said. Her voice was warm, genuine. She was good at this, at making people feel special, at making moments matter. 60 years. I can't believe it, but I'm so grateful for this life, for my incredible husband, for our amazing children. She looked at Derek. "Derek, you make us so proud every single day, saving lives, making a difference. You're everything we hoped you'd be." She looked at me, paused. "And Maya, sweetie, you're here too. That means a lot. You're here too. Not you're talented, not we're proud of you, not we're sorry we've never asked about your life. Just, you're here too." The table clapped politely. Derek stood up, raising his glass. "To Mom," he said, "and to family. I know I don't say it enough, but everything I've accomplished is because you two believed in me. You sacrificed so much, paid for my education, supported every decision. You always saw my potential. They'd paid for his medical school, all of it, $250,000. They'd been proud to do it, had told everyone. Our son, the doctor. I'd asked for help with culinary school, $5,000 for a semester. My father had said, "Maya, we're not paying for you to learn to cook. That's not a real career. If you want to throw your life away, do it on your own dime." I'd worked 3 jobs to pay for it myself. Waited tables, catered parties, baked wedding cakes at 3 in the morning. I'd done it alone. Derek took a sip of wine, set down his glass. "And hey, not everyone is built for the same path, right?" Maya took the creative route, the easier path, less stress. And that's fine too. We can't all be doctors. The easier path. I'd worked 18-hour days for 7 years. I'd gotten a loan rejected because baking isn't a real career. I'd missed birthdays, holidays, friendships because I was in a kitchen somewhere, trying to perfect a sauce that most people wouldn't even notice. I'd stood in front of health inspectors, investors, critics who could destroy everything I'd built with one review. I'd cut my hands so many times they were covered in scars. I'd burned myself, exhausted myself, pushed myself to the edge of breaking because I had something to prove. Not to them, to myself. I'd almost called them the night I got my Michelin-star. I'd stood outside the restaurant at midnight, phone in my hand, crying so hard I couldn't see the screen. I'd wanted to tell them. Wanted them to know. Wanted them to be proud. Then I remembered. They didn't call when I graduated culinary school. Why would this be different? Dessert arrived. My dessert. Dark chocolate pavée with hazelnut praline and vanilla bean crème anglaise. The dish that made food critics use words like transcendent and life-changing. The dish I'd developed while going through the worst year of my life. When my first sous chef quit, when my investor pulled out. When I'd been so broke I'd eaten rice and beans for 3 months straight because every penny went back into the restaurant. I'd made this dessert on the night I'd almost given up. Had sat in my empty dining room at 2 in the morning, tasting it, crying and thinking, this is it. This is what I was meant to do. It had saved me. This dessert, this restaurant, this life I'd built with my own scarred hands. My mother took a bite. Her eyes widened. "Oh my God," she said. "This is incredible. This is the best thing I've ever tasted." My father nodded in agreement. "This is what I'm talking about, Maya. This is the level you should aspire to. This is real culinary art." Derek ate his in 4 bites. "Yeah, this is insane. Maya, you should see if they're hiring. Maybe you could apprentice here or something. Learn from the best." Something inside me clicked. Not anger, not sadness, just clarity. I stood up. Every head in the room turned toward me. "Actually," I said, my voice steady, "I need to check on something in the kitchen. You know how it is. Can't trust anyone to get things just right." My mother laughed. "Honey, sit down. You're not working tonight. Just enjoy." "No, really," I said. "I need to talk to the chef. There's something that needs addressing." I walked toward the kitchen, and I could feel their eyes on my back, confused, slightly embarrassed for me, the daughter who didn't quite get social cues, the one who made things awkward. I pushed through the kitchen doors. My kitchen. My team looked up, ready for orders. "Everything good, chef?" Marco asked. "Perfect," I said. "Actually, better than perfect. I need you to do something for me." I walked back out to the dining room. The table had resumed conversation, already forgetting my weird exit. I stood at the head of the room and cleared my throat. "Sorry for the interruption," I said. "I just needed to clarify something. Mom asked earlier why I needed to check with the chef, and I realized there's been a misunderstanding." My mother looked mortified. "Maya, please sit. I am the chef," I said, "and the owner of this restaurant, Lumiere, where you're celebrating, where you've been eating all night." The room went silent. "The lobster you loved, my recipe. The duck, mine. The dessert that was the best thing you've ever tasted, I spent 2 years developing that. I've made it about 6,000 times." My father's face had gone pale. My mother's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Derek," I said, looking at my brother, "I'm not hiring, but if you ever want to apprentice, I could probably find you a spot washing dishes. It's a great way to learn humility." His jaw went slack. "Mom, you introduced me as someone who helps with catering sometimes. That's technically true. Last year I catered the governor's fundraiser and Senator Wu's wedding, and the Google executive retreat. So yes, I help with catering. Sometimes." I picked up my bag from the back of my chair. "The meal tonight is covered," I said. "It's my gift to you. Happy 60th birthday, Mom. I'm glad I could be here too." "Maya, wait," my mother started, standing up. "I have to go," I said. "I have an early flight tomorrow. Paris. There's an awards ceremony. Something about being named one of the top new chefs in the world. I'm sure you'll read about it in the Chronicle." I looked at my father. He looked older suddenly. Smaller. "Why didn't you tell us?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I smiled. The real smile this time. The one I saved for my team, for my regulars, for the people who saw me. "You never asked," I said. I walked toward the door. My mother called my name again, but I didn't turn around. Derek just sat there, frozen, his perfect surgeon hands gripping the edge of the table. I pushed through the front doors of Lumiere and into the cool San Francisco night. The city lights stretched out before me, glittering and indifferent and beautiful. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Please come back. We need to talk." I typed out a reply. "I'm available next Tuesday at 2 p.m. at my restaurant. You'll need a reservation. We're booked 6 weeks out, but I'll see what I can do." I hit send. And then I walked. Not toward my car, not toward home, just walked. Through the streets I'd navigated 1,000 times on my way to early morning markets, late-night prep sessions, meetings with investors who bet on me when my own family wouldn't. My phone kept buzzing. Derek calling. My mother calling. Texts from my Aunt Linda. "I had no idea. You should have said something." I should have said something. That's what they always said. Like it was my responsibility to force them to see me. Like I should have shouted louder, demanded attention, made myself impossible to ignore. But I'd learned something in 10 years of running a kitchen. The best dishes don't announce themselves. They don't need to. You taste them, and you know, the work speaks. The craft speaks. The years of discipline and failure and tiny victories speak. I'd spent 3 decades trying to translate myself into a language my family would understand, trying to be worth noticing, worth celebrating, worth calling back. I was done translating. The stars were out, barely visible through the city haze. I thought about Paris, about the award, about standing on a stage in front of people who knew exactly who I was and what I'd done to get there. People who'd never once called it the bakery. I smiled to myself. Not the polite smile, not the practiced one, the real one, the one that meant I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Walking away from the table they'd set for me. Walking toward every table I'd set for myself. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sad about what I was leaving behind. I was just free. Finally.